Hello again, and welcome to Finding Sanctuary. This is a series of discussions between Buddhist nuns about the Therigatha. The Therigatha are poems composed by fully enlightened nuns at the Buddha's time. I'm Ayya Vimalanyani, and with me today is again Venerable Munissara. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Our poem for today is a conversation between a bhikkhu and a bhikkhuni, who are mother and son. And I'm going to share my screen again so that people can see the poem. Can you see the poem, Ayya?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so when you're ready, please go ahead and read out the poem.
Buddha, please never ever get entangled in the world. My child, do not partake in suffering again and again. For happy dwell the sages, Buddha, unstirred, their doubts cut off, cooled and tamed, and free of defilements. Buddha, foster the path that the hermits have walked for the attainment of vision and for making an end of suffering. So that's Therigatha 9.1, Buddha's mother.
Mm. This is the next line. The next line.
Yes. I'm trying to make a different voice so you can hear that this is the bhikkhu talking.
Good.
Mother, you speak with such assurance to me on this matter. My dear mom, I can't help thinking that no entanglements are found in you. Buddha, not a jot or a skerrick of entanglement is found in me for any conditions at all, whether low, high, or middling. All defilements are ended for me. Meditating and diligent, I've attained the three knowledges and fulfilled the Buddha's instructions. Truly excellent was the goad with which my mother urged me on. Oh, with compassion, she spoke verses on the ultimate goal. After hearing her words be instructed by my mother, I was struck with righteous urgency for finding sanctuary. Striving, resolute, tireless all day and night, spurred on by my mother, I realized supreme peace.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This is such a beautiful poem. I literally get goosebumps when I hear it because it has so many beautiful lines. And again, we have the line about finding sanctuary from the title of this series.
Yeah.
And then happy dwell the sages, the paths the hermits have walked, realizing supreme peace. I think it's just a really, really beautiful poem that you have picked here. So maybe you can go ahead and share with us your reasons for picking this poem.
Right. What spoke to me about this poem was that this was a example of a mother teaching her child the Dhamma, and for me that reminded me of my own life, because I consider my first Dhamma teacher my mother. Because I was not living in a Buddhist country, even though my parents were Thai. I was born in the Philippines and we were living there for most of my childhood. So the only exposure I could have to the Dhamma was through what I saw my mother doing and what she actually told me or spoke to me about. So I remember even when I was a child, I remember her, reading Dhamma books or even reading the sutras, and also speaking to me of things exactly like this. Like, I don't know if she actually said, my child, do not partake in suffering again and again, but she did, kind of speak of the suffering of samsara. And I kind of had a sense, I mean, she never told me as much when I was a child, but you know how you can kind of just pick up on things, and I felt my mother probably would have wanted to become a nun, and then sometimes you would just see her kind of have this sort of like look at, I had my sister and I, like her children, and sort of be like, but I've got you, you people, to look after. And so, and I never felt bad about that. I felt like, oh gosh, I wish my mother could be a nun. I wish that this were available for her, and I would totally get it. I would totally get that this is like such an important thing to do with your life. Yeah, I think also that she would have been happy to know that I became a nun. I mean, she passed away before I actually became a nun, but I felt it was like no coincidence. It was very strange. I didn't pick the date, but the date of my going forth happened to be her birthday. You know, that there was some kind of connection there. And I felt if she had been there, or if she was there as some deva or something, you know, she would have totally anumodana and would have been very much, you know, happy that I took this path. And I feel like, you know, imagine like if your mother could give you the advice to become enlightened. Like many people, they turn to their parents for advice, especially if you're a daughter, you know, you might look to your mother. And even if you were a son, you would look to your mother for life advice, or they just teach you all sorts of stuff, even practical things, you know. And imagine if your mother could teach you to be enlightened. Like, that would be like the most amazing gift, you know, the most amazing teaching that a mother could offer her child. And how cool would that be to have personal guru be your mother? You know, to have your Dhamma teacher be your mother. That itself would be such a special connection. Because you know, I feel like often there are many women who want to become ordained, you know, and they want to take spiritual life more late, but then they feel that they have to raise their children, they have to make sure they're okay, they're grown, everything. And even after they're grown, you know, sometimes you see ladies in the ministry who are already quite as in years, children already like 20s or even later, you know, and they still feel like, oh, but I can't make sure my they're okay. And I think the very I guess cultural and also social or whatever expectation of women to take care of that duty in that way. And it's just sort of, for me, it was sort of eye-opening to like look at when I went to look up who Vada is, you know, and, you know, read whatever the commentary said about this verse. It's like, oh, apparently, according to the commentary to a story, Vada's mother gave birth to Vada, and then not long after, she went off to ordain because she was able to entrust Vada, her kinsfolk, and she went off to strive for Nibbana, and she did, you know, and then she got it, she became enlightened. And only when Vada grew up, he became a monk, and she was able to teach him later. But that actually, it was okay for her to leave, even though he was only just newly born, and to go and become a nun, and just to practice diligently, and to, in the end, come back and be able to teach. And so, I mean, I think like there's so many people, they think like, oh, what a terrible mother she left her child when she just newly born and became a nun or something. I mean, but it's like, oh, look here, historically it happened, actually turned out to be good. That actually she went off and was able to, you know, reach the highest goal and be able to teach him how to become enlightened. So actually, wouldn't that be the greatest thing, or the greatest mother could give her child? Like, as long as the child had enough people to look after. I mean, even nowadays, like, you know, in Thailand, lots of people who live in the provinces or rural areas, they have to go to Bangkok to work to earn a living, and so they leave the child in the care of the grandparent or some other relative, and only see them, you know, once or twice a year or something. And that's totally okay. That's like totally normal, totally acceptable to, you know. But if that same person went off to become a nun, they'd be like, oh my gosh, what a terrible person, terrible mother, you know, like child, you know, it's that kind of thing. But what if the mother was able to go off and become enlightened, teach the child that, as opposed to just going to Bangkok to earn a paycheck and, you know, feed and clothe her child? I just feel like, wouldn't that be such like a greater gift? Wouldn't it be wonderful if more people could be supported, practice like that? Like, I think it's very hard to get around, but it reminded your head, because we so much expect mothers to be there for their children when they're young. But if you think of the Buddha, I mean, he did exactly the same thing, right? You know, Rahula is like this newborn babe, goes off I go to strive for enlightenment, and he does, and he comes back and he's able to teach Rahula to be enlightened. And so this poem called that to mind. It was sort of like the female version. I mean, of course, it's a whole different level. You become the Buddha, you know, than to become the. But it's pretty good. But the Buddha was able to also, well, after he struggled as a young newborn babe, he went off and he strove, and he, you know, was able to be enlightened and able to share that with his child. And the power of that teaching was what helped his child to become enlightened. And so seeing an example, you know, other doing what's atypical, which is not to be there for her child, you know, feeding it, clothing it, being there while it's young and raising it the normal way, but to leave the home, but come back and lead the child to enlightenment. I think I remember I was going to say that if I reflected on my own life, I guess, yeah, I would probably feel a loss if I didn't have my mother there with me as I was growing up. But if later on in life she was able to come back and teach me to be enlightened, maybe it would have been worth it. Like, even if you have your mother by your side, especially as you get older and you face difficulties in life and bring inside you found that having the mother physically right next to you couldn't solve it, you know? I mean, it's nice, and I appreciated the moral support that a mother can provide. At the end of the day, the suffering in your own mind, no matter what their best intentions, if your mother isn't enlightened, she's not gonna really be able to help you get out of that. If your mother is not fully enlightened, she can only teach you what, you know, whatever level that is, and maybe that does help a lot of people to some level. But if for complete freedom from all suffering, you know, I guess your mother has to be enlightened. So so I guess, of course, there. But it was just really just sort of amazing to see this example of that happening in somebody's life, and be able to actually encourage them on the path, but also show them the way, and also the power of their own realization somehow is able to be transmitted to their child, possibly because of their close connection, or maybe just possibly because of the power of their own attainment, being able to convey that deep understanding of the Dhamma, and also urging, you know, hey, I've done it, you know, and now you go and do it. That's so powerful. Seeing a mother urging their child to more than just worldly achievements, you know, more than just going to school, studying hard, getting a job, getting married, having nice grandchildren for me, that kind of thing. But don't get entangled in the world. It's really refreshing, you know?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been cool if your mother had advised you like that? Yeah. And also, so, but I think my mother did, you know, in her own way. I think that's the message I got from her. So I appreciated that. I appreciated that my mother never ever said, oh, go and get married, have grandchildren for me. You know, like, she never did that. And neither did my father, actually. So I feel very, very grateful that my parents never encouraged me to get entangled in the world. They didn't necessarily go off and, you know, become a nun, but they didn't encourage me in the wrong direction, at least. And so to see that in this poem, you know, it really was very, I guess, just very rare, I find, experience in the world. When you see other people come to the monastery, or you see other nuns who are ordained, I mean, so many times their parents don't get it, or they're not that happy with it, or you know, yeah. But there are times when they are, and in the cases where the parents are very supportive and really get it, you feel so uplifted. That's wonderful when parents encourage their children on this path, and to give that priority and importance to the spiritual life. I think that's it's very beautiful to see parents do that, because it's basically a giving up of their own hopes and expectations of the child to do stuff for them as their parent, to be there next to them or whatever. So it's very beautiful, I think, for both sides to be able to do that for each other, to just support anybody who wants to take up a spiritual life, and for people to be encouraged to do that. I think is one of the pieces that spoke to me from this poem. And also the fact that when people do take it seriously, they are able to be enlightened, and then able to provide something really, just so rare in the world. So if more mothers can be encouraged to take up the spiritual life, or that it can be considered, something that they're not frowned upon for doing, I always find that very, very beautiful to see. Like, even though my own mother has passed away, I always feel very happy when I see other of the nuns' mothers stay at the monastery, or when I see sometimes lay people come together as a team, mother-daughter team, and they come and stay at the monastery. And I always find that such a beautiful thing, that mother and child share that this is a spiritual undertaking they're doing together, that they share that interest and that commitment to the practice. And so I think that's actually we don't often see this portrait of mother-child relationships like this, but that is a very beautiful one. And I really I guess was touched or moved by this poem because of that, to see that happening for a mother and child, whether it's mother and son or mother and daughter. It's still really just an amazing thing to see happen in the world. And so I feel like if we can, wouldn't it be great if more mothers and children walked hand in hand in the Dharma, and like, obviously there is some karmic connection that causes people to be born as parents and children, but how powerful a connection were utilized for both sides reach the goal, and coming to the end of suffering, as we have in this poem. It's like, hurrah for Buddha's mother, so hurrah for Buddha, and how much more that the both of them now can go off and benefit all sorts of people who may or may not be biologically related to them. So this is something that I felt was very uplifting. And so that, whatever we do, parents can benefit from our spiritual life, and also whatever striving parents do on their spiritual path can benefit their children. And to have this be a way of giving to our parents and giving to our children that is I guess given more weight in our normal dealings with family or relationships, that this piece be there, and be highlighted, and that's wouldn't that be wonderful if that did? So that's one other thing I wanted to say about this book.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. When you have these seeds planted as a child, then you have this solid basis, and your Dhamma practice can really grow. So I think you were in a really lucky position there. And also, one other thing I found very special about this poem is that here we have one example of a nun teaching a monk, and that's very rare actually in the Pali Canon. Usually it's the other way around, that the monks are teaching the nuns. And but we can really see, it's not a one-sided relationship. In the early Sangha, they supported each other, and whoever was the more advanced one was teaching the younger one. And monks accepted teachings from nuns, and they were so inspired, and they were so willing to practice, and then they achieved enlightenment because of the teaching from the nuns. So I thought that was a very, very beautiful aspect of this poem as well.
Yes. Well, it probably helps if that nun was your mother.
Yeah.
But no, that is you're right, a sort of rare occurrence. And yeah, it is a nice example of that. And it worked. It's effective.
Okay, I think we have come to the end of today's video. This is the last poem that we discuss in this series of Finding Sanctuary. So today will be the last episode. If our viewers have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section. We are going to answer them all in our live stream. And once again, Ayya Munissara, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a privilege to have you today.
You're welcome.